Pawnee, Oklahoma, 15th of September, 1971. Bernard A. Kelner of Oklahoma City, representing Living Legend History of Oklahoma, supervised and arranged by Oklahoma Christian College of Oklahoma City. Interviewing Judge Thurman S. Hurst. I believe the short biography sketch is in line. Judge Hurst, District Director, OPS, Tulsa. From behind the plow to the highest judicial post of Oklahoma has been the line of march for Thurman S. Hurst, District Director of Eastern Oklahoma for the Office of Price Stabilization. Judge Hurst is a native of Missouri, but came to Pawnee, Oklahoma with his parents in 1894. He attended country school and worked on his father's farm before he entered the University of Oklahoma, where he received his LLB in 1912 at the age of 23. He moved to Willika and practiced law for 2 years when he was elected county attorney and re-elected for 2 more years. In 1918, he returned to Pawnee to practice law and also served 8 years as a member of a portion of the time as president of the Board of Education. In 1930, he was elected district judge and re-elected in 1934. In 1936, he was elected to the Supreme Court of Oklahoma and was re-elected in 1942. In 1945 to 46, he served as Vice Chief Justice, and in 1947-48 as Chief Justice, retiring in 1949 when he did not choose to seek re-election. In January 1949, Judge Hurst began the practice of law in Tulsa with his son, Edwin. In the fall of 1949, he was appointed by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court as a member of the State Pardon and Parole Board. However, he resigned his post there when he was appointed OPS Director for Eastern Oklahoma in February 1951. Judge and Mr. Hurst have 3 children: Mrs. Helen Haney, Tulsa; Edwin S., attorney, Tulsa; and Robert T. with the American Telephone and Telegraph Company at Oklahoma City. Judge Hurst is a member of the Order of the Koi Phi Delta Phi and the Tulsa County, Oklahoma and American Bar Association, the Christian Church, and the Masonic Lodge. Since 1963, he has practiced law in Pawnee, Oklahoma. It is a pleasure to introduce for his reminiscing on this tape, Judge Hurst.
Don't just talk now. I was born in Barry County, Missouri, and when I was about 3 years old, my parents and brothers and sisters came to Stillwater, Oklahoma, in a covered wagon. We camped on the Grand River the day that the Outlaws robbed the bank in Coffeyville, Kansas. We lived in Pawnee County for about 2 years. We were living in Ingalls at the time. The Outlaws had the battle with the United States Marshals, and some persons were killed in that ruckus. And then in In June 1894, we moved to a farm 5 miles northeast of Pawnee, where we grew up and where I attended the country schools and also attended the Pawnee High School, graduating in 1909. In the fall of 1909, I entered the university when the Oklahoma Law School was organized, and in 1912 was a member of the first graduating law class of Oklahoma University. After graduating, I served a while as Assistant County Attorney of Pawnee County. When soon after the election in 1912, I went to Leak and practiced law 2 years, and then was elected in 1914 as county attorney, and re-elected in 1916. And at the end of my second term, I returned to Pawnee to practice law. And I served about 8 years on the Board of Education, part of the time as president of the Board of Education of Pawnee. And then in 1930, I ran for and was elected district judge of Tulsa and Pawnee counties, and was re-elected in 1934. And in 1936, I ran for the Supreme Court of Oklahoma from this judicial district, and was re-elected then in 1942 and served 12 years on the Supreme Court of Oklahoma. Electing not to seek a third term on the Supreme Court, I retired in January 1949. Soon after I retired from the Supreme Court, I opened a law office in Tulsa with my son Edmund, who was just shortly before return from the Second World War. And we practiced law together several years. Then, after about 2 years after I had retired from the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice appointed me as a member of the Pardon and Parole Board, and I served about 2 years on that board, meeting every month either at McAllister or Granite to consider the application of those seeking clemency. Then about June 1950, after the Korean War had been going on for about 6 months, I was appointed OPS director for the eastern half of the state and served as such until the office was closed in 1952. In the meantime, my son had been elected or appointed as one of the attorneys for the Gulf Oil Corporation, and I chose not to practice by myself in Tulsa, and I came to Pawnee to open a law office in Pawnee, but I have practiced law ever since. During the 6 years I served as district judge, I tried many cases that were controversial cases, since the judges who were residents of Tulsa County preferred not to try some of those hot cases that were quite controversial. And one of the cases I tried was a case against Judge Kelner's son on murder charges. That was moved to Pawnee on change of venue, and I presided over the trial here in Pawnee. And he was convicted and sent to the penitentiary for 25 years, I believe it was. And on the Supreme Court, I wrote many, 600 or 700 opinions are in the books, dealing with most every question of civil law. While I was a district judge presiding in Tulsa, the Deepak Oil Corporation became financially involved, and Dennis Flynn, who served as a delegate to the Congress during territorial days, appeared, and at his request, I appointed Mr. Moore, who was later a United States Senator, as receiver of the Deepak Oil Corporation. During my growing up and residence in Pawnee, I was quite well acquainted with Pawnee Bill, who was quite a character. But one of the early cases I had after I settled for the practice of law in Pawnee, I sued him to quiet title to some property in Pawnee that he had acquired at a tax sale, and was successful in defeating his title to that property. He was quite a character. He wore long hair, and his hair was pulled on top of his head under his hat. When he'd be on the street, he wouldn't be showing long hair, but when he took his hat off, his hair would be quite long. And he was quite an active man, and received a lot of publicity as a frontierman and showman. I have attended his show when he ran the show, the Pawnee Bill and Buffalo Bill show that was running together. I was fairly well acquainted with Bert McGuire, who was a practicing lawyer in Pawnee in the early days, and served as a member of Congress after statehood. And he later moved to Tulsa, and I used to see him when he was practicing law in Tulsa.
And so ends the interview with Judge Hurst. Thank you, Judge, very much. And this is the interviewer, Bernard A. Kelner, signing off. 30.